Oh, brothers, I'm here to tell everyone, stop voting. Don't vote. It's a bad idea. Has no sense whatsoever. And if you calculate it by the math, you have statistically a 0% chance of influencing an election if your vote is counted, which it won't be. And I'll tell you the reason why. In America, you have two major problems at the beginning of this long list, which make voting completely irrelevant. Number one is AIPAC. The AIPAC chooses all of your candidates. Israel chooses who is allowed to be a candidate in the U.S. Israel, i.e. Rothschild, the banking mafia, Daddy Warbucks, decides who is allowed to be one of your candidates. If you have a particular issue which Daddy Warbucks has already decided, for example, will we be going to war? Will we be supporting drugs in Afghanistan? Will we, try to take over more territory in Iran? Don't think one candidate will be different from the other, because these are hand-picked by the government of Israel, which is atheist, Talmudic Jews. They're mafia. They're big liars. They're criminals who changed their names in just the last generation. I mean, what's the real name? It's like the grandfather of Bibi Netanyahu, that fake name. You don't know. Two, the second reason is the votes are counted by Voxio, and a private Israeli company, private in the sense that Americans can't influence it, but public in the sense that it is of the Israeli government and the Mossad, Voxio counts your votes. Of course, there's no real vote counting, I don't think. Could be that they count, let's say, they've got two candidates, they sort of prefer one or the other, but like 90% of the American people voted for the one they kind of don't like as much. Maybe he'll get into office, but they could skew it, within a range of 10% points, 20% points even, if they want. And that's just a slight adjustment. Both of them were picked by Israel anyway. And then at the last stage there, they decide who wins, and they count the votes. Why is it you go into a voting booth and it's like you're doing something dirty, like you're defecating? You have to close the door, and it's private. Well, as we know, a lot of dirty things happen in private, and voting is one of them. And you don't need to vote if it's going to be private, because if it's private, then nobody can confirm that you voted. So isn't that a problem, brothers? You need to get your vote on a public list and then see the count for yourself and be able to count it with your own computer, your own software. How many votes for this one or that one, and then see your own vote on there and confirm that your vote is counted. That would be if the candidates were not picked by Israel, which they are. So the Maya thing, it's several stages, several levels. It's ridiculous on every level of these 20 different levels at least. So the hoax is so many faceted, you don't know where to start. Level 3. The candidates have no contract. They have no working contract. Do you have one? Of course you do. You go to work, you have a contract. Do they have a contract? No. Why is it that the guy who sweeps the floors has to have a contract, but the guy who runs the country has no contract? He has no obligations. There's nothing written there that says he has to do anything he says. He has no job description that he has to fulfill. When you're listening to Obongo and Mitt Romney say this or say that, it's irrelevant, because if one of them promises this or that, it's not in writing. You'll never get it. So even if you like one of their ideas, you're not going to get it. It's not going to happen. It never will. Because they have no obligation legally to do what you contracted them to do. Would you hire workers with no contract and just say, well, let's just talk about it? Is that a good way to do business, folks? No. ID. Do we even know who we're voting for? Who are these puppets? The birthers talk about the problem with Obama the most, but a lot of them also talk about McCain. McCain was born in Panama. And now we have this Mitt Romney, who they're saying is probably also not a natural born citizen, whose parents at least were, born in Mexico or something else. So right now in your country, you are allowed to officially have presidents from foreign powers. Okay, so what if we say the Chinese president is, Shelley MacLaine? She's dead. But, an Irish person. Would the Chinese put up with that? No. There's different levels of corruption. One level of corruption is you have puppets, but the puppet is of your own race, your own nation, and they still sort of represent things for you. The next level of corruption, much deeper, is when the puppets don't even belong to your own nation. That's a whole nother level there. And I never saw this before Obongo. I don't think it's fair to call him Obongo, because I don't think he can even play the bongos. He's not even that talented. He could talk out the left side of his mouth, like Dick Cheney. People who read faces, tell me what that means. What does it mean when somebody talks out the left side of their mouth? What is real freedom? Freedom is when you're not bogged down in trivialities. The new dictatorship, autocracy, is being inundated with trivialities. Voting is one major triviality. Watching TV programs on bogus candidates with bogus jobs, with no real contract, no stamp, no fines for not doing what he's supposed to do, who can't be fired. Voters who are not responsible to the public. Aren't they choosing the leader of the country? That's pretty important. I think we should know who these voters are, what their names are. If they vote in some evil person, they should be held accountable, shouldn't they? This is a pretty big problem with having private voting. You can't confirm who voted, how many votes there are, and the people who voted take no responsibility for the decisions, which is why the whole system seems to be a bunch of very greedy, selfish people jumping into voting booths, hoping to vote for somebody who is personally going to give them more monetary advantage. It's pretty pathetic. It's just like pigs hoarding around a building hoping there's grain in it. It's really pathetic. Now, in China, we don't have to vote. There's no voting. If there's voting, it's done by the group of leaders that are in Beijing or in Taiwan. Taiwan has the Nationalist Party. People in Taiwan vote, but their government is slightly legitimate. For example, they have a Chinese president in Taiwan. It's pretty amazing, isn't it? If you keep dreaming, maybe you'll get one in America. Dream on, baby. How about this one? We don't file taxes in China. We're not bogged down in this paperwork to file taxes. The person you work for has an accountant and they handle the whole thing. You don't see a single tax form in China. You don't fill one out. You don't put in your name, your social security number, your all that. You pay less taxes in China. In Nanjing, we pay no taxes when we sell our house. The property tax you pay once every 50 or 70 years. I paid about $700 for 50 years. I paid once, and there were no forms. I stood in line. Somebody looked over how much the value of my house was, and I paid it right there. It took about a half an hour. So paperwork, pushing pencils, filling in forms, including voting, including paying taxes. You're slaves, folks. It doesn't matter at that stage how much money you're paying. And after you're spending a month on filing your taxes and voting and going here and there, then how much money are you paying? That's literal slavery there. You can calculate how much slavery there is by how much time you're spending on pushing this pencil and how much tax you're paying as a percentage of your income. So, you know, that's a floating thing. We could have a socialist system or a capitalist system, it doesn't matter. If we're paying very high taxes, but we have a secure system and everything in society is provided for, the government is less corrupt, a socialist system works too. Did you know that after Japan was bombed into the Stone Ages, they rebuilt their country, the entire cities of Tokyo, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, in 20 years, and they were, by order of the US government, they were a socialist society when all this happened. They had growth rates of 10-20%. Rebuilt a country in one generation on a socialist system. Ponder that. It's not because the socialist system is good, it's because the system doesn't matter. And that's another way that television is wasting your time. They get you into these futile debates between socialism and capitalism, and you're not supposed to argue over who is in office. You're not supposed to think about who has the power over you and which ones are corrupt. Like, how in the heckers is Dov Zakheim walking around free in the United States of America when he spearheaded 9/11? How is that possible? Why don't you arrest these people? And Dov Zakheim is still there. Rahm Emanuel is at the top of the US government now. Hey, wasn't he CEO of Freddie Mac? Didn't he steal like 1/3 of all Americans' pensions? He personally did that, folks. And guess what? He's your Secretary of State. I don't care if you're a capitalist or a socialist country, period. If you've got Rahm Emanuel in that office, you're going to lose everything. He's a foreign citizen. He's a citizen of Israel. He doesn't give a damn about you or your country. And the first thing you got to do is stop feeding the system, stop voting. I'm going to leave today with some anagrams from the word television. Number 1, evilest ion. Evil waves, evil particles, evil things coming at you. Television, you can respell this to spell violet sine, violet curve. Sexed up, lots of boobs, lots of advertisement for you to put you down the road to reproduction. Reproduce. Television can be respelled on levities. That means it is about things that don't matter. And finally, television can be, the letters in television can be arranged to write vote in lies. Vote in lies. So you get to vote in the lies. You get to vote in your Obongo or your Romney, though you probably had nothing to do with it, which is pretty pathetic. And don't go around wearing these dumb shirts like there's, I voted today. Change the shirt for a Special Olympics shirt or something. It would be more appropriate. Alright. Good days, gents. Don't waste your time voting. Be blessed and spend more time on your meditation, studies, and skills. Om.